Novel crops in general are something that we as an organization like to focus on. Part of the reason is we're always trying new things, trying to adapt things to our region. And a lot of the reason is we just want to make more money with different crops. We want new markets to develop. We want to have a competitive edge over the farmer beside you. You name it. But there actually is a lot of risk associated with novel crops too. So that's the nice thing about being able to take a look at things, not always ahead of all farmers, but most farmers, figure out what works, what doesn't, and how to adapt that new crop. Although it may be an old crop in other areas, it's a new crop here to southern Alberta. Hemp is a perfect example. It's one that, you know, it's kind of slowly gathering momentum. We haven't really developed the appropriate markets for it to take off, but you know, I think there's a lot of promise in that area. We've seen some crops come and go, and you never hear about them again. You know of any like that, Ryan? Yeah. Okay. So it does happen, and funny enough, even the ones that go away for a long time sometimes come back with a huge resurgence. So the neat thing is as agronomists, as farmers, we have a leg up on everybody in knowing what's going to work in this area. So in this particular case, we're talking about dryland grain corn. You guys have seen lots of corn around here, but it's usually under irrigation and it's usually for silage. There's a few guys that have been playing with dryland corn for a number of years with varied success, but the initiative and onus that's being put on purposefully by the big breeding companies is coming up with varieties that have appropriate heat units for not just southern Alberta, but for all of Western Canada. They're really trying to push that opportunity, and it may seem like, oh yeah, big corporation's an issue, but if it helps make farmers make more money, in the long run, that's all that really matters. We have in southern Alberta amazing agriculture, a lot thanks to irrigation, but we have diversity in crop options up the yin yang. And John asked me, what the heck, we don't need another crop in southern Alberta, but funny enough, we're still getting requests from people on what should I grow that's new and different, and it appeals to that innovation front that people can build new businesses. Lots of great success stories. On the hemp front, we're getting calls across the whole province, like, can I grow hemp? Because the crops that used to be their main staple money makers are no longer. How many guys are making money off of barley these days? Agronomically, it's a fantastic crop. As a farmer, if I could choose that crop to grow opposed to a lot of other ones, I would grow it, but there just isn't the marketing opportunity. So corn offers a neat opportunity, probably first to southern Alberta, because we have more heat units, more opportunity to take advantage of that huge yield potential that a C4 crop has. And this project was really designed, how do we tailor it into what was normally a really dry environment? We seem to be on a wet cycle, but how do we get it into zero till? The majority of corn grown across the country in the North America is not zero till. It's very conventionally grown. This planter behind me is designed for row crops, so row crop farmers would know about it. How many of you guys know about planters? Do you want me to spend any time on it at all? Are you listening? Lunchtime? Okay, so because corn is grown like it's a hybrid seed like canola is now, it's a pretty expensive input, but it also responds very well to very specific agronomy. So spacing between plants is important. It's not like the typical air seeder where you've got a roller and seed just pours out there. These ones, and right now we're set up on a 12-inch row spacing. That's why it looks a little funny, but we're also studying using the planter for canola. Not going to talk about that. But on corn, we're studying 20-inch row spacing and 30-inch row spacing. So that's an agronomic characteristic. We're looking at planting populations. We're looking at fertility, and we're looking at varieties. Basic stuff. What I'm going to share with you, though, is the rotational aspect of the study. It's not really what I'd call a system study. It's a 2-year study. And we're looking at what should we grow corn after? What is the preceding crop? So in this case, we'll go look at it. We've got a number of different crops that would typically be grown in a dryland rotation here in southern Alberta. And then we followed up with corn. And half of it we did conventionally, so we worked up the field. The other half we did direct zero-till. The planter, which I'm fond of, but I'm still learning, is a little bit more management than your typical air seeder. It's actually the opposite of an air seeder. It's a vacuum planter. So the fan up there is a vacuum fan, and what it does is sucks the seed onto these plates. And if you guys want to, you can come right up and take a peek here. I cannot show it to you unless I take it out. Anybody care? Oh, come on, somebody care. It's easier if you come on this side. I'll take it off. So this is the plates that you put on. The vacuum sucks air through the holes, and each individual seed is sucked onto that little hole and then very precisely dropped down on the ground. So now instead of just throwing seeds out there, we're doing exactly what we want and how we want. We can change our rates by the number of holes on these plates and just space them out. Or we can change the speed at which that plate turns. So you can play around with rates. In this case, we just use sprockets.
Are you using flat or round seed in this one? This is set up for flat corn seed or round seed?
This is for canola.
That's for canola.
Yeah, this is a canola plate. The corn hole plates are much bigger and bigger spaces between. We just happened to finish on some canola. Oh, you know what? I didn't finish on canola. This isn't a canola plate. Could be used for canola. We did precision wheat. Yeah, so we did a demo on planting wheat with it as well. And same idea, we manage corn so intensively. We're talking about very precise number of heads, perfectly even distribution. We're doing a demo on wheat to try to mimic what happens in corn.
Less tillering.
Yeah,
more even
if we get even flowering, we can manage perhaps fusarium head blight. So in fact, we have a research proposal into the funding consortium to start looking at that and all of the neat interactions that would happen with using a planter. Great. I'm sorry to the rest of you, but I told you if you wanted to come over here, you could. The other beautiful thing about a planter is it's on a parallel link system. And everybody talks about parallel link. I have a hard time getting people to actually describe what parallel link means. So if you're interested in it, these two are parallel. That's the linkage. What this does, and there's some physics to it, is it allows the disc to push into the soil as opposed to being dragged behind. And that's why these are very, very good at accurate depth control. On top of the parallel linkage, because of the zero-till, we have just these Yetter residue remover. So that the idea there is we push the residue to the side so that these discs can properly punch through. This year we've seen some hairpinning issues with this, but maybe we didn't adjust the row cleaner effectively. The other neat thing about this is that it's got this is called a seed firmer wheel. See, it's just a flat wheel. When the seed comes into the ground, that wheel presses the seed down nice and even. So instead of a packer wheel where soil is flowing back around, before it closes, that seed firmer pushes down, and then this is the closing rail. So you can see that there's a lot more to the type of opener than our typical mainstream seeders, which allows a little bit more accuracy. Really, really cool for, I think, shallow seeded crops as well.
In a no-till situation, how much of a band of tillage does it leave behind? 4 inches?
This planter alone?
Yeah, but the way you got those coulters in front.
So the coulters in front, because in the dryland area, we like to do all of our fertilizer, all one-pass seeding operations. What happens in the majority of corn is they'll work it ahead of time and fertilize at that time, and then they'll have a liquid kit. So that's our liquid kit there, that cone there, cone-shaped thing. So they'll just put phosphorus down in the seed and nitrogens ahead of time. This planter is equipped with a side banding nitrogen opener. And that's what these front coulters are.
I meant how much ground disturbance for the row does it leave behind in the no-till situation?
Well, we can go look at it. Yeah, I think the majority of it comes from this wheel.
So about 4 or 5?
Yeah, 4 inches wide.
Half of the, almost half.
Yeah, it is a little bit higher disturbance with those fertilizer coulters on. You take the coulters off and it's definitely a cleaner surface. So the nitrogen is in the discs off to the side. I'm not in love with the double disc because they are fairly aggressive in wet soils. It likes to pull up the clay. In the sandier soils, they work pretty fine. But the idea is we're getting some experience with a single pass seeding situation because that's really what farmers want to do down south here. Any questions on the planter so far? Okay, let's go take a look at some plots. So this trial was seeded May 11th. This is the latest seeded corn trial that we had. It was sort of just the last one that we came up with. We seeded at 20,000 kernels per acre. So that's the difference in row crop versus our pounds per acre or our bushels per acre. In that world, it's always about seeds per acre. So that's a different way of thinking about the crop and requires just a little bit of different math skills, but it can all be converted over to what we do, and they manage it that precisely. You know, it's sort of like using your 1,000 kernel weight in canola or wheats. 20,000 was sort of what we thought would work out best in a dryland type scenario. I mentioned the fertility trial before. Corn being a C4 crop uses a little bit more of the later season heat, so therefore there might be the opportunity to do some split applications in that crop. A lot of people are trying around with their high clearance sprayers, doing split applications of nitrogen. There's a lot of people that think corn would really benefit from that. So in our one study this year, we tried to do that with your basic dribble banding nozzle, and actually felt like it hurt the corn more than it did any good. So all we've done here is put on drop tubes that are on the same spacing as the corn. This is a 30-inch row. And then all we're going to do is just offset it to the side a few inches so that we can precisely, with our RTK, drop down our dribble band. The other thing that a lot of people are playing with too is actually coming up with an implement with discs and disking in their fertility beside the corn to try to give it an in-season boost. Our results to date, though, is fertility doesn't matter as much as rotation. So on all of our fertility studies, we really didn't see a significant response to nitrogen, but we did see a significant response to what was grown before the corn. And as we walk through here, you can think about that. You can visually see why that is the case. Some of it is issues at seeding, some of it is lack of phosphorus early on in the spring, and probably some other reasons. As far as the tillage is concerned though, while the crops always look so much better with tillage, we have better even emergence. That's the challenge moving over to a zero-till scenario, is getting that same control with your seeding depth. So here it looks like a pretty nice even crop. We rototilled ahead of it. That's our version of tillage. But overall, we had a 5 bushel yield reduction in the tillage side. So that's pretty significant. Although things look nice in the spring, they come up better. That loss of moisture is hurting the corn in the long run. So this was after a soybean crop. You can see we've got a few volunteer soybeans in there. That also is something to consider. You've got now Roundup Ready soybeans and Roundup Ready corn. How do we control that? There's probably some broadleaf options, but I'm not sure. Let's move down. So this one is in wheat. These are all of the tilled plots. Corn after wheat didn't look great. It was in the lowest of all of the crop groupings. Basically, 3 groupings that look to be different in yield responses. while corn after corn was good. It was good after lentils. So take a good look at the lentils and then take a good look at canola and tell me if you guys can see a difference there. For sure. Can you guys see the difference? I feel like I'm on a Tide commercial. So this is a very visual difference that most often farmers don't get to see in their fields. They might look at this crop and say, corn's coming up, looking good. But right beside your lentils, what are the differences that you're seeing?
Purpling in the leaves.
Yeah, purple.
Yeah. I think they're even a little stunted too.
Yeah.
So we put down, I think we went as high as, we did 3 gallons an acre of the liquid phos, which is about pushing the max as far as seed safety, but it did have phosphorus with the seed, but we are seeing a phosphorus response here. You guys know why? Yeah. So canola and mustard are non-mycorrhiza crops. So the following year, the corn is dependent on the mycorrhiza to get that phosphorus in, so we have early season deficiencies. A lot of people will say that it doesn't affect yield. I would say in a dryland scenario, it is affecting yield.
Times everything in dryland.
Yeah. Yeah. So remember now, it's a little bit different strategy than trying to hit maximum yields like we do under irrigation or in Iowa. Here we have limiting factors like water, so the agronomy changes with that environment. So I mentioned corn after corn. Corn after corn actually does work really well. Probably why a lot of farmers are still doing it.
But we don't have the corn borer, I'm not the corn borer, sorry, the rootworm. Right?
Not really. Corn after peas is good. And now we're on to mustard, and I think you could probably see that effect again after mustard. They're just smaller plants, a lot of purpling. Yeah, it's pretty surprising. Good visual. So now we're moving into the zero-till side. This is kind of pushing the boundaries of the planter where that was probably honestly designed for a tillage-based system. Brian Buckman, where is he paying attention still? He's already gone. Oh, there he is. So Brian asked me today, what was it? You saw a difference in your durum based on what was seeded there the year before.
Canola or pea stubble last year, canola stubble this year, 2 different fields 4 miles apart. Nothing changed on the drill at all, like absolutely nothing. Different emergence on the canola stubble versus the pea stubble. Just the mallower soil.
So which one looked better?
The canola stubble actually looked better.
Canola looked better. So
The plant emergence on the canola is way nicer than on the pea stubble because of the down pressure. And when I checked it, I got a Morris C2 drill, so it's parallel or independent. You can see exactly where the tractor tracks pushed it and packed it. The emergence are way better behind, and that's typically.
But that's because you should have made it so it's lighter on the peas then, not the fault of the peas.
No, I'm not saying there's no fault there. I'm just saying the
Oh,
difference.
okay.
The difference between down pressure, like one field to another field, just down pressure on it. So you move from you set your drill and you check. My durum on the pea was the first stuff I did. So you get out and check everything and thought everything was good, but just the conditions how they change, going from pea stubble to canola stubble, down pressure differences. We're seeding.
More tilth than the pea stubble.
Yeah, we're seeding pea, which is 1 inch. Canola we're seeding C, which is 3/4 of an inch. Just a difference in pressure throughout the field. Right?
so then in that case, you seeded too deep on the pea field. Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting story too, because we're seeing similar effects, particularly with this planter based on the different soil types. But it's really, really kind of neat to think about what does the previous crop do to the actual soil structure too, as far as the rooting capacity. That's something that's quite unique. For me, I was thinking about this personally on my farm, not because of the crop type, because of the irrigation system. I've put subsurface drip irrigation, and I've already noticed a really significant change in the soil structure as far as the mellowness, and it's all these different factors that will play into, you know, the success of a crop. So when we're doing that, now think about that as we move across the zero-till plots and the previous crop. There's probably two factors that are impacting our germination and our evenness. I think that is one of them, and the other one is likely hairpinning. So take a peek for it and shout it out if you see it. Now peas, low residue crop, I think that corn goes into that on a direct seeding scenario just perfectly. It's a really nice fit. So here we are, canola again. Doesn't look as good. I think we probably could have done a better job setting those residue cleaners. I think we've got a hairpinning issue with this trash right here, but a whole gap's missing. This was seeded exactly the same way. Like Brian mentioned, maybe we probably should have been adjusting the drill more specifically, like Clara said, based on each different crop. So it's something that I don't think we tend to think about, but it might be worth paying a little bit more attention to.
On no-till corn acres in Ontario, they use two-footed coulters in the front.
Yeah.
So.
You mean ahead of it to actually till it? So that's like more like a strip till type approach. So yeah, and I think that would actually be really a worthwhile thing to study. In fact, we have that in our application to the funding consortium for sort of the next phase of what we'd like to study in corn. So you're saying that's on the implement itself,
yeah,
as opposed to I think a lot of the strip till is done ahead of seeding.
They can do that.
And they also will fertilize while they strip till. So that's an interesting perspective. Also, it's another pass. It might be something that as a dryland farmer, you'd have to get yourself accustomed to doing a little bit more work rather than just showing up in your field and giving her hell. Soybeans, they don't look too bad to me. So wheat on the zero-till, I think we're coming into the same sort of issue. You can even see that the residue was pushed nicely to the middle, but maybe not quite enough to get that perfect penetration. We have gaps in our stand, and in corn that's kind of a no-no, but because again, I mentioned we're not hitting maximum yields on dryland, we're trying to go for optimum economic yield. We probably have a little more wiggle room in not being quite so, nice word for anal? Particular. So corn on corn works great with tillage. How do you think it worked out with the zero-till this year? Yeah, that didn't work out too well for us, and again, issues with that drill being able to cut through that really heavy residue. Could have we set the cleaners a little bit more aggressively? Perhaps, but you can see that pretty big differences in how good of a job we did, just simply based on what was grown there the year before. And then right beside it is lentils, and it's just a really dramatic difference.
They actually have special mowers they use to go over the corn after they're done harvest and just flail.
Just chop it up.
Yeah.
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 I think that's also in our proposal. Yeah. So if we're going to be successful in dryland corn, we have to consider what we're going to be doing with that residue. And some guys are baling it. There are mowers that are made up to just chop it up and spread it. But again, it's another operation that, you know, if the economics work out for it, that it's something to consider. So because of the level of residue, the thickness of it, it's just something that we're going to have to figure out how to manage.
You already have one, the hill simulator.
Yeah.
Like a vertical tillage.
Yeah, vertical till would work. I think that they call that light tillage. It's tillage.
Oh, it's tillage,
It definitely.
Yeah, it depends which one you're playing with, right? There's
Yeah.
so many different varieties in the vertical tillage.
So the idea with strip tillage is take something like a vertical till and then do it in a narrow band, exactly where you're going to seed next year.
Yeah, because the whole issue here with dryland corn, you're going to need to keep what moisture you have. That's the absolute goal. So conventional is just not. I don't think conventional is going to be your answer.
No, not down here. Not when we do get into our more drier years. Like I said, we've been in a wet cycle that's really allowed us to do things that we normally couldn't.
So if you go over with a 30-foot wide mower at 10 miles an hour, which those things can do.
Yeah.
So what? You keep it no-till. That's great.
Yeah. That's all I've got for you on the corn. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to do my best. Yes, sir.
How does it look going into hemp ground?
Haven't done that. No. No idea.
You're really curious about hemp, aren't you?
So some tidbits on the data to point to date. The 20-inch versus the 30-inch, seen about a 5 bushel advantage to moving down to a 20-inch row spacing. And in dryland, it's probably, better canopy closure, maybe a weed control effect there as well. Just more optimum use of that soil profile, given that we're in a shorter growing season. As far as this study, there were some groupings: peas, lentils, basically all of the pulses, soybeans, and corn yielded the best after those crops. The worst was the canola and the mustards and wheat. And then in the middle ground were the other crops that I didn't mention. I can't remember what they are. Fertility, like I said, limited response to fertility. I think that under our zero-till systems, generally speaking, we've done a great job at getting our soils healthier, better able to release nutrients throughout the growing season. And we've been focused on nitrogen for so long, I think it's probably time to move on to other things. Nobody selling fertilizer here?
Your side banning. 5 bushel difference on what kind of yields are you talking about?
So last year we were in that 80 bushel range. But to me, 80 bushels on dryland is pretty awesome. Of course, you've got higher expenses. Nikki Rasmussen with Pioneer came in the other day to give me shit that it wasn't 100 because everything she did on dryland was 100. And I said, fine. We'll try this. We'll try to do better this year. But to me, I'm more concerned about the relative differences on research plots than I am in the actual. Things are certainly going to behave.
Did you hand pick the cobs from in?
No, we've got a corn header for a plot combine. Yeah. Anything else?
Fusarium, not an issue? Lauren?
Fusarium is. You can stand it. The wheat falls less.
We're not studying fusarium yet. It is susceptible to fusarium.
It normally isn't.
But in all honesty, fusarium on dryland is not big. Yeah. And if we have a diverse rotation, we should be okay.
It'll be the wheat and the durum after the has to.
And I already said wheat after corn doesn't really work that well. So I think if we manage it with rotation effectively, should be good. The other thing that I should mention, I know it sounded a little hard on wheat. The reverse is likely true according to Dr. Dwayne Beck. He says you'll be amazed what a corn in rotation will do to your wheat. So there is some sort of positive effect to wheat because they grow winter wheat in rotation with corn and soybeans, and he's made that claim to me. I don't fully understand it, but that's something else that
He's saying that the wheat does better after corn.
No, that with corn in rotation, your wheat will benefit from it.
Yeah, the wheat does better
Yeah,
after corn.
not necessarily right after it, just in rotation. Maybe the
So
second
your
year.
corn on corn, what's your plan? Is it you gonna go corn 4 years in a row? Or are you gonna give up after 2?
This is just a 2-year study. Yeah. Hard to get longer-term rotational study funding on things like that.
Without things like rootworm to worry about, probably the sky's the limit. But if we ever select for pests by doing continuous corn, then we're just set ourselves back 20 years.
Right. Okay, let's head out for lunch.